All right. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the Seattle Storm Roundtable. It is excellent to be joined by two, great colleagues and great people, and Christian and Rowan here. I am Charles Hamaker. I get a lot of flack for these videos that we do, which is fine. If I make you angry, at least, love me or hate me, you watched. The Seattle Storm offseason has been fascinating ever since exit interviews, and I think both of you guys would agree with that. Um, I know we talked after, the investigation and all of that, all the great reporting that Christian did and all the things that we heard, you know, it's fascinating, and we seem to be moving forward along past that. We are in WNBA free agency, and I'll give you sort of a crash course at where we're at now. Um, there had been the reports about Jewell Loyd asking for a trade, something that we all kind of thought was coming. And that trade officially went through on February 1st with it's a three-team trade with the Las Vegas Aces, the Los Angeles Sparks, and obviously the Seattle Storm. The Aces received the number 13 overall pick in addition to receiving Jewell Loyd. They got that number 13 overall pick in this year's draft from Los Angeles. Uh, Kelsey Plum, University of Washington. Oh, hi, Kelsey. University of Washington alum got her jersey retired just what felt like a week or two before this news. Um, was traded to the Sparks, and then LA's Lee Uru, I believe that good. Did I get that right? Perfect. Was dealt to Seattle. The Spark received Seattle's number 9 overall pick in this year's draft and Seattle's second round pick in 2026. While Seattle, the big crown jewel for them coming back in this, all the graphics show Kelsey in Sparks colors and Jewell in Aces colors. And it was like, oh, Seattle was the chair in the corner. Not necessarily. They get that number 2 overall pick in this year's draft, as well as the Aces 2026 first round selection. That all went down. People will debate, who won that trade. Seattle gets something out of it, that a chip that could really set them up for the future. So that was a big deal. Um, the next big domino to get us to this point was the news of Nneka Ogwumike re-signing with the Storm. This is something that I think all of us anticipated happening, whether it was just how she talked about the organization, how she talked about, the coaching staff here and being represented, her being at unrivaled with Pokey Chapman. And then hours after the WNBA's free agency show on ESPN, Chiney Ogwumike, obviously Nneka's sister, broke the news on SportsCenter that her sister was signing with Seattle, re-signing with Seattle, and she said a little source told her. I'm like, oh, who could that be? So that's big, obviously, to get, Madam President back with Seattle. Um, you re have retained three of the core four from last season, obviously, with Jewell gone. Where we sit now, the Storm have two, I believe, what, six players that are signed officially, and Skylar Diggins-Smith, Jordan Horston, Ezzie Magbegor, Nika Mule, who's obviously coming off of injury. Um, that she sustained this offseason. Nneka and Lee Rue, who Seattle got her rights, but then actually did sign her. And then Gabby Williams was cored on January 14th, but has not signed that. So, um, in terms of, I'll go over the departures really quickly. Joyner Holmes signed a training camp contract with the Dallas Wings. Obviously, Jewell has gone to Las Vegas, and Sammy Whitcomb, another UW alum, has signed in free agency with the Phoenix Mercury. Mercedes Russell and Victoria Vivians are both unsigned, so they're kind of floating out there. And as we kind of talked about before we started this, the free agency pool left this offseason is interesting, in one word. And it's also interesting that Seattle has the second most cap space currently of any team in the league behind the expansion side Golden State Valkyries. So that's how we've gotten here. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I'm not that old. Um, Christian, we'll go to you, and then Rowan will get your thoughts as well right after that. Um, just your thoughts on where we're at now with, as I mentioned, this cap space. Seattle has holes to fill. Obviously, it's great to have the younger core parts like Jordan, like Ezzy, to have the veterans like Skylar and Nneka. But obviously, there's work to be done for Talisa Ray. Uh, I don't know how to say her last name. I know I said Talisa. Talisa and Pokey in free agency. Where are we at right now?
Well, Charles, Rowan, it's the dog days of the offseason for the Seattle Storm right now. And I think we're kind of seeing a ripple effect. Um, the former investigation that didn't find any results of player misconduct, not player mistreatment, that the coaching staff was investigated for. Then, Jewell Loyd requested the trade the very same day, really hours afterwards. And, I don't think people understand how small the WNBA is as far as like one, the actual teams, the media circles, and then the players themselves. Everyone talks, everyone's friends. And I feel like we're kind of seeing that right now as far as the way players have not come back. If you think about it, Charles Rowan, the entire bench is gone besides Nika Mule, and now Jordan Horson is probably going to be starting now. I mean, she like you said, she the 104. I'm a big guard. She can play the two, she can play the three, she can really do everything. Play the four and stretch minutes. That's great, but you only have a handful of contracts, and honestly, the field out there isn't exactly inspiring to a team that you would think that wants to compete for a championship. So I'm not really sure where they go from now. There are a lot of guards out there that I think could do well, but also have some issues to go along with those. And then really need a position that you need basically a player at almost every position right now. I'm not sure if you just have a rash of hirings of players that you just kind of need to fill the roster right now, but it's not looking pretty to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, going off of that, with the WNBA being small, I think some people have touched on it, but with Unrivaled too, there's kind of another layer of like conversations that can happen that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise, and friendships that are forming and relationships that are forming. And like you said with Jewell, she obviously is an Unrivaled. She's talking to a lot of people, and that it seems like it could have had some influence on the way that free agency is going for the Storm right now. The lineup of people that are left, it's a little scarce, and I think that when you look at these big name free agents that back a couple of years ago when Breanna Stewart made the decision to go to New York over Seattle, that was an issue because the timing of her decision made it so the Storm was out of contention with a lot of big free agents. And last year, they were able to sign Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nneka Ogwumike and, had that. But now they're kind of back in that same position where maybe it's not so much the timing because they knew that Jewell wanted to leave, but now it's this thing of, all these teams are snatching up players that either don't want to meet with us or we haven't had conversations with. And so, yeah, I think they're in a really tough position right now. And just looking at who's left, I mean, you have Alicia Clark, who obviously spent a very large chunk of her career in Seattle, but it seems like she's having a good time in Las Vegas. We're not really sure. There are a lot of the people who are left, it appears to me, are kind of waiting to sign somewhere just based on cap space and just kind of seeing, maybe they already have an affiliation with the team. They've already had these conversations, but it just hasn't worked out yet. So I think the way that the Storm is right now, they're going to end up with some people that, will be decent pieces, but no one that will kind of be able to fill in that role that Jewell left and that space that Jewell left, which we've had that conversation many a time with this team of who's going to step in and, fill in these shoes. And it doesn't have to necessarily be that there's someone, at Jewell's caliber, but like you said, Christian, there needs to be someone at every position at this point. And if you wanted to completely change how your team is and let's say be a super strong post team and as opposed to what the Storm's identity has usually been, there's even not that option at this point because of the field that's out there. So I honestly don't really know where they go from here. I think that we kind of speculated that maybe they'd try and trade the number two pick after that, just because we know that they seem, the Storm likes that kind of veteran presence. But at this point, I think they should stick with that number two pick and really focus on the future. And unfortunately, they kind of missed their free agency um, opening. So gotta look towards the future, I guess.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Where are you going to watch the Seattle Storm away games this year?
Away games. Well, Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports. So I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See you all here.